The biting wind whipped across the glacial expanse of Veraxis Prime, carrying shards of ice that stung any exposed skin. Captain Jace Thorn adjusted the thermal collar of his uniform, his breath pluming in the frigid air, a stark white against the bruised purple sky. Below him, nestled in a valley carved by ancient ice flows, lay the designated coordinates for the diplomatic rendezvous. It was a desolate place, sharp peaks of black rock jutting through the omnipresent snow like broken teeth. His mission objective resonated with cold clarity in his mind: negotiate access to the Veraxian crystal deposits, resources deemed vital by the Terran Confederacy. His superiors spoke of the native inhabitants, the so-called beastwomen clans, with a mixture of apprehension and dismissal. Savages, they called them. Primitive warriors clinging to harsh traditions on a harsher world. Jace, however, held a certain confidence, a belief in his ability to navigate complex situations, to charm and persuade where force might fail. He had brokered deals on a dozen worlds, faced down corporate warlords, and mediated disputes between species that barely acknowledged each other's existence. A tribe of fur-clad females on a frozen rock. How difficult could it really be? His landing craft, the Stardust Drifter, rested heavily on the packed snow behind him, its engines silent, a metal intrusion in the vast, silent landscape. His crew, a lean team of 4 specialists, moved with practiced efficiency, setting up perimeter scanners and atmospheric analyzers. Ensign Richter, young and eager, checked the seals on his environment suit. Atmosphere is thin, Captain, but breathable. High nitrogen content, low oxygen. Temperature is steady at -40 degrees Celsius. Jace nodded, his gaze fixed on the dark, imposing ridgeline dominating the southern horizon. That was where the intelligence reports suggested the dominant clan made its stronghold. Keep the ship warm. Richter. Full shields. Minimal power signature. We don't want to appear threatening, but we also don't want any surprises. Lieutenant Eva Rostova, his second-in-command and communications specialist, approached him, her helmet visor reflecting the bleak panorama. Sensors are picking up movement, Captain. Approximately 2 kilometers out, approaching from the ridge. Multiple contacts. Biologicals moving fast. Jace felt a familiar thrum of anticipation, the prelude to first contact. On schedule, then. Maintain passive scans only. Eva, let them see we're waiting, not hiding. He straightened his uniform tunic, a useless gesture in the bulky suit, but a habit born of countless diplomatic meetings. Charm, he reminded himself. Find common ground. Offer mutual benefit. The figures emerged from the swirling snowdrifts like phantoms born of the ice itself. They were tall, powerfully built, moving with a predatory grace that spoke of lives spent traversing this unforgiving terrain, clad in thick pelts and what looked like crude, yet effective, armor fashioned from bone and hardened leather. They carried long, serrated blades and heavy projectile weapons that seemed a strange mix of primitive design and advanced energy principles. Their faces were obscured by intimidating masks carved into snarling animalistic visages, but Jace could sense the intense scrutiny directed towards his small party. They fanned out, forming a loose semicircle, their movements coordinated, disciplined. Warriors, not disorganized savages. A figure larger than the rest, adorned with intricate bone trophies and draped in a magnificent brass-colored pelt, stepped forward. The mask this one wore was different, more elaborate, suggesting leadership, a low, guttural voice, amplified by some internal device in the mask, echoed across the ice. Terran, you trespass. Jace activated his external speakers, pitching his voice to be calm, non-threatening. We come in peace, representing the Terran Confederacy. I am Captain Jace Thorn. We wish to speak with your leader to discuss matters of mutual interest. He gestured towards the Stardust Drifter. We offer trade, resources, technology, in exchange for access to the crystal formations abundant on your world. The leader remained motionless for a long moment, the wind howling around them. Then, a sound that might have been harsh laughter crackled through the amplifier. Your trinkets mean nothing. This world provides. Its treasures are not for off-worlders to plunder. The tension ratcheted higher. Jace kept his hands open, visible. We understand this is your world. We seek only a partnership, an agreement that benefits both our peoples. The crystals possess unique energy properties valuable to us. We are prepared to offer substantial compensation. Another figure, leaner but radiating a similar aura of danger, stepped beside the leader, whispering something Jace couldn't catch. The leader tilted her masked head. Compensation. You offer shiny things. We value strength. Prove your worth. Terran. Not with baubles, but with steel. Before Jace could process the shift in tone, before he could attempt to de-escalate, the air exploded with violence. Energy bolts, thick and searingly bright, erupted from the beast women's weapons, impacting the Stardust Drifter's shields with concussive force. Alarms blared from Jace's suit communicator, shields holding. Captain, but taking heavy fire. Rostova yelled, already drawing her sidearm. Richter and the other two crew members scrambled for cover behind the landing gear, returning fire with standard-issue pulse rifles. The beast women charged, closing the distance with terrifying speed, their serrated blades flashing in the dim light. It wasn't a negotiation tactic. It was an ambush, a slaughter. Jace drew his own weapon, firing controlled bursts. But the attackers were relentless, their movements fluid and difficult to track against the snow. One of his security officers went down, his suit breached by a wicked-looking spear thrown with incredible force. Then Richter cried out, a bolt searing through his shoulder armor. The beast women were brutally efficient, overwhelming the Terran's defenses through sheer ferocity and numbers. Jace saw Rostova fall, her last transmission cut off by static. He was backing towards the ship's ramp, trying to provide covering fire, when a towering shape blurred past his vision. Pain exploded in his side as something heavy slammed into him, sending him sprawling onto the ice, his rifle skittering away. He looked up into the snarling visage of the leader's mask, inches from his own face. Powerful hands gripped his suit, effortlessly hauling him to his feet. The figure's strength was immense, inhuman. Through the mask's eye slits, he saw burning, intelligent eyes lock onto his. Weak, the amplified voice rasped, filled with contempt. Jace struggled, a futile gesture against the iron grip. He saw the remaining beast women efficiently dispatching his last crew member. Smoke poured from the battered Stardust Drifter. His mission, his confidence, his crew, all gone in a matter of minutes. The leader signaled to her warriors. Two of them roughly bound Jace's hands behind his back with thick leather thongs. The leader, the one they would later call General Kaelira, gave him a final, dismissive look. Spoils, she declared, the word echoing with chilling finality. Then, he was dragged away from the wreckage of his ship, away from the bodies of his crew, up towards the forbidding black peaks. A captive taken by the savage warriors of Veraxis Prime. The cold deepened, seeping into his bones, but it was nothing compared to the icy despair flooding his soul. He wasn't a diplomat anymore. He was plunder. Consciousness returned slowly, painfully, like surfacing from a deep, dark ocean. Jace's head throbbed. His side ached where he'd been struck. and a profound chill had settled deep within him, a cold that had little to do with the ambient temperature. He blinked, his eyes struggling to adjust to the dim, flickering light. He wasn't on the ice anymore. He lay on a pile of rough, surprisingly warm furs, spread over a stone ledge. Above him arched a ceiling of rock, vast and irregular, hinting at an immense cavern. The air was thick with unfamiliar scents, smoke, roasted meat, damp earth, and a musky, animal odor he instinctively associated with the beast women. He tried to sit up, but a heavy weight and the clink of metal stopped him. A thick, cold band was clasped around his left wrist, attached to a heavy chain bolted directly into the stone wall beside his makeshift bed. He was chained, a prisoner, correction. He remembered Kaelira's chilling word, spoils. He pushed himself up, ignoring the protest of bruised muscles. The cavern was enormous, a natural formation expanded and shaped by deliberate effort. Torches set in crude sconces cast long, dancing shadows, revealing walls carved with intricate, primitive patterns and scenes of hunts or battles. Other ledges and alcoves dotted the cavern walls at various heights, connected by rough-hewn stairs and rope bridges. Beast women moved through the space, their powerful forms draped in pelts, their movements purposeful. Some tended fires, others sharpened weapons. A few sparred with a controlled ferocity that made Jace's skin crawl. Their voices echoed in the vast space, a guttural language he couldn't comprehend, punctuated by sharp cries and occasional, harsh laughter. They largely ignored him, casting only fleeting, dismissive glances towards his ledge, as if he were merely part of the cave's furnishings. That indifference was almost more unnerving than open hostility. He wasn't important enough to warrant sustained attention, merely secured like a potentially troublesome pet. A smaller figure, clad in less ostentatious furs, approached his ledge carrying a wooden bowl. It was a younger beast woman, perhaps barely past adolescence by their standards. Though still powerfully built, she placed the bowl on the edge of the stone near him, avoiding eye contact. Inside was a steaming, unappetizing mush of indeterminate origin. She grunted something, then quickly retreated. Hunger gnawed at Jace, but pride and revulsion warred within him. He stared at the offered sustenance, then back at the chain securing him. He wasn't just a captive, he realized with dawning horror. He was being kept, cared for, in a rudimentary way, fed. Why? Why hadn't they killed him like the rest of his crew? Days bled into a disorienting cycle of dim light and deeper darkness, marked only by the changing shifts of guards near the cavern entrance and the regular delivery of the bland, utilitarian mush. Jace learned more through observation than interaction. This stronghold, carved into the heart of the mountain, was clearly the center of Kaelira's clan, the Brass Fangs, named for their leader's distinctive coloring. They were a warrior society, valuing strength, prowess in combat, and resilience above all else. He saw evidence of crude technology alongside their primitive weapons, scavenged or perhaps adapted from wreckage, like his own ship, integrated seamlessly into their way of life. What struck him most was the social structure. While Kaelira was clearly the dominant authority, the general structure seemed matriarchal. Females held the positions of power, led the hunts, made the decisions. Males were present, larger and more heavily muscled than the females in some cases. But they seemed fewer in number, often relegated to heavy labor or acting as guards, rarely seen participating in councils or leading war parties. And then there was Kaelira. She visited his ledge occasionally, always flanked by guards, her presence radiating an aura of absolute command. She would stand just beyond the reach of his chain, her masked face unreadable, those burning eyes studying him with unnerving intensity. She rarely spoke to him directly, preferring to issue orders regarding his care or security to her subordinates in her own tongue. But her gaze lingered, analytical, curious. It wasn't the look of a captor assessing a prisoner's threat level. It was something else, something he couldn't quite decipher. But it made him deeply uneasy. He tried addressing her, demanding answers, attempting negotiation, even resorting to threats he couldn't possibly back up. Why am I alive? What do you want from me? Let me go, and the Confederacy will. His words were usually met with silence, or occasionally, that low, harsh chuckle that sent shivers down his spine. Once, she responded, her amplified voice cutting through his tirade. You are loud. For prey. He learned snippets of their language from the guard's chatter, picking out recurring words. Kaelira, strength, outsider, prize. That last word confirmed his dreadful suspicion. He wasn't just spoils of war. In this society, where perhaps males capable of matching the female's strength and status were rare, he, a Terran captain who had survived, however briefly, against their warriors, represented something unusual, a novelty, a curiosity, a prize. The realization was deeply humiliating, fueling a cold rage that burned beneath his fear and despair. He was Captain Jace Thorn of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, not some exotic pet to be chained and observed. He began to refuse the food, a petty act of defiance. He met the gazes of the beast women who passed with sullen hostility. He tested the strength of his chain, yanking against it until his wrist was raw, hoping to provoke a reaction, anything other than this casual indifference. His resistance did not go unnoticed. One cycle, Kaelira arrived not with guards, but alone. She had removed her imposing war mask, revealing a face that was both fierce and strikingly alien. Her features were strong, angular, framed by the thick brass-colored fur that covered her body, high cheekbones, a broad nose, a wide mouth filled with sharp teeth, and those eyes, intelligent, predatory, and unsettlingly direct. Without the mask, her voice was lower, rougher, but still commanding. She knelt just out of his reach, placing the bowl of mush before him. He turned his head away, staring resolutely at the stone wall. You starve yourself, she stated, her Terran basic surprisingly clear, though heavily accented. It is foolish. Jace remained silent, his jaw tight. She nudged the bowl closer with a clawed finger. Eat, or grow weak. Weakness invites death here. I'd rather die than be kept like an animal, he retorted, the words low and fierce. Kaelira tilted her head, a flicker of something, surprise, amusement, crossing her harsh features. Animal. You see insult, we see purpose. Animals serve the clan. They hunt, they guard, they provide, or they become prey. She studied him, her gaze traveling over his defiant posture, the raw skin on his wrist. You fought, not well, but you did not surrender easily. There is fire in you, small, but present. She paused, her eyes meeting his. Strong males are valued, those who possess spirit, not just muscle. Such males are rare among our own kind. Most are content to follow, to serve. They lack the spark. Her gaze intensified. You resist. You glare. You pull at your chain like a trapped krell beast. You refuse sustenance. This is not the behavior of the broken. This is interesting. Jace felt a cold dread mix with his anger. She wasn't just keeping him as a datrophy. She was evaluating him, judging his spirit, and she seemed intrigued by his refusal to submit. This was worse than being a pet. He was some kind of test subject, a curiosity measured by his defiance. "I am not your property," he spat. Kaelira actually smiled, a brief flash of sharp teeth. "No, you are not. Property does not fight back. Property does not interest me." She stood, towering over him. "Eat. Terran. Survive. Prove that the fire is real, not just the last flicker of a dying ember. We shall see what you are truly made of." She turned and walked away, leaving Jace alone with the bowl of cooling mush and a profound sense of unease. He wasn't just a captive, he was a challenge. And Kaelira, the savage queen who had taken him, seemed eager to see how he would respond. He picked up the bowl, the rough wood coarse against his fingers. He would survive, not for her, but for himself. He would show her fire, and one day, he would use it to burn his way out of this frozen hell. The days that followed settled into a tense routine, marked by Jace's grudging acceptance of sustenance and Kaelira's continued, unsettling observation. His defiance hadn't earned him freedom, but it had altered the dynamic. The dismissive glances from the other beast women were now tinged with curiosity, sometimes open hostility, but rarely indifference. Kaelira visited more frequently, sometimes alone, sometimes accompanied by her imposing second, a scarred warrior named Vorla, with eyes like chips of obsidian. Their conversations, if they could be called that, remained terse, circling the uncomfortable truth of his captivity and her interest in his unbroken spirit. "You learn our words." Kaelira noted one cycle, watching him track a conversation between two passing guards. Jace offered only a non-committal grunt. He was learning, absorbing every detail, filing away information about their hierarchy, their rivalries, their weaknesses. "Why learn the tongue of your captors?" she pressed, crouching near his chain, her brass fur catching the torchlight. "Knowledge is survival," Jace replied tersely, refusing to meet her gaze. "Perhaps," she conceded, "or perhaps it fuels futile hope." His captivity transitioned from the ledge to a slightly larger, marginally more comfortable alcove deeper within the stronghold. Still chained, but with a longer tether that allowed him limited movement. It felt less like a cage and more like assigned quarters. A subtle shift that Jace found profoundly disturbing. Was this acceptance, domestication? He redoubled his efforts to appear resistant, challenging Kaelira whenever she approached. "When will this farce end?" he demanded one cycle, pacing the length of his chain. "When will you tire of this game and kill me?" Kaelira merely watched him, her expression unreadable. "Death is easy, uninteresting. Life, struggle, that holds value. My life has no value chained to a rock in your cave," he shot back. "Value is earned, Terran, not given." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You speak of games. Perhaps a demonstration is needed to show you the cost of weakness and the rewards of strength in our world." The next cycle, he was unchained, not freed, but escorted by 4 heavily armed guards out of the main cavern and through winding tunnels carved deeper into the mountain. The air grew warmer, heavy with the smell of sweat, blood, and exertion. They emerged onto a wide circular platform overlooking a large, sand-filled pit. Tiers of rough stone seating rose around it, packed with roaring, stomping beast women, their voices a deafening wave of sound. Below, in the pit, 2 large males were locked in brutal, unarmed combat. It wasn't sparring. It was a fight to submission or death, raw and savage. Claws raked flesh, teeth tore at pelts. Heavy blows echoed sickeningly. The crowd roared its approval with every landed strike, every gout of blood. Jace watched, stomach churning, as one male finally pinned the other, sinking his teeth into the defeated warrior's throat until he lay still. The victor rose, roaring, covered in blood and sand, raising his arms to the frenzied crowd. Kaelira stood on a high platform opposite Jace, flanked by her advisors, observing the spectacle dispassionately. Her gaze flickered towards him, a silent question in her burning eyes. See? This is strength. This is consequence. Jace felt a surge of revulsion and a chilling understanding. This was the core of their society. Brutal, unforgiving strength. He was brought here to witness it, to be intimidated, perhaps broken. But as he watched the victor drag the loser's body from the pit, something else sparked within him, defiance. He wouldn't be broken. He wouldn't cower. Later, back in his alcove, Kaelira appeared. "You saw the pit," she stated, her voice low. "You saw what happens to the weak." "I saw savagery," Jace retorted, meeting her gaze squarely. "I saw a waste of life." Kaelira studied him, a frown creasing her brow. "It is the proving ground. It weeds out weakness, ensures the clan remains strong." "There are other kinds of strength," Jace countered. "Intelligence, cooperation, strategy, not just brute force." A flicker of interest entered her eyes. "You believe your ways are superior. Your strategy led your ship to ruin and your crew to death." The barb struck home, sharp and painful. Jace flinched but held her gaze. "My mission failed because I underestimated your welcoming committee. It won't happen again." Kaelira let out a short, harsh laugh. Bold words. Terran, easy to speak from the safety of a chain. She stepped closer, invading his personal space. He could smell the faint scent of the outdoors clinging to her fur, feel the heat radiating from her powerful body. "You speak of strength beyond muscle. Show me." Jace blinked, surprised by the sudden challenge. "How?" "You will train," she declared. "With my warriors, you will learn our ways of combat. Not in the pit, not yet, but you will learn to defend yourself, to fight as we do. Then we shall see if your other strengths have merit." Jace hesitated. Training with them meant cooperation, participation. It felt like a step towards assimilation, towards accepting his place here. But it was also an opportunity, a chance to learn their techniques, assess their weaknesses, perhaps even gain a measure of freedom, however small. And more than that, it was a direct challenge, a chance to prove Kaelira wrong, to show her that a Terran, even a captive one, possessed a strength she couldn't comprehend. "Fine," he agreed, his voice steady. "I will train. But not as your student to be molded. As an opponent to be tested." Kaelira's lips curved into that sharp, predatory smile again. "Excellent. Vorla will oversee your instruction. Begin tomorrow." She turned to leave, pausing at the entrance to his alcove. "Do not disappoint me, Terran. I find disappointment tedious." Training began under the relentless, unforgiving tutelage of Vorla. The scarred warrior was brutally efficient, teaching Jace the fundamentals of their unique combat style, a blend of powerful strikes, grappling, and the use of their traditional serrated blades. It was physically demanding, pushing Jace to his limits daily. He was battered, bruised, often thrown humiliatingly into the dust of the training grounds, much to the amusement of the onlooking beast-women warriors. Vorla offered no praise, only curt corrections and harsh assessments of his failures. "Too slow. Terran, weak grip. You telegraph your intent." Yet, Jace endured. He pushed through the pain, the exhaustion, the humiliation. He drew on his own military training, adapting Terran techniques, using agility and leverage to counter the raw power of his opponents. He learned to read their movements, to anticipate their attacks, to exploit momentary lapses in their defense. He wasn't trying to beat them, not yet. He was learning. surviving, growing stronger. Kaelira often observed these sessions from a distance, her expression unreadable. Jace could feel her gaze on him, analytical, assessing. He refused to show weakness in her presence, pushing himself harder, enduring Vorla's harshest blows without flinching. He began to anticipate Vorla's training methods, sometimes even managing to score a point, land a blow, or execute a successful counterthrow. These small victories were met with grudging silence from Vorla, but Jace saw the flicker of surprise, sometimes even reluctant respect. In the eyes of the other warriors, he was still the outsider, the captive, but he was no longer merely an object of pity or contempt. He was proving he had that fire Kaelira sought. During one grueling session, after Jace managed to disarm Vorla using a quick, unexpected maneuver learned in Terran close-quarters combat, the scarred warrior paused, breathing heavily. She stared at the blade lying in the dust, then back at Jace, who stood ready, muscles trembling with fatigue. "You learn," Vorla stated, the closest thing to praise Jace had yet received from her. But learning is not enough. To survive here, you must dominate. The tension between Jace and Kaelira evolved alongside his training. Their encounters became less about captor and captive, and more about two wary opponents sizing each other up. The curiosity remained, deepening on both sides. Jace found himself intrigued by Kaelira's burden of leadership, the complex politics of the clan he glimpsed, her fierce determination to protect her people in this brutal world. Kaelira.in seemed fascinated by Jace's resilience, his adaptability, his refusal to conform to the expected role of a defeated male. "Why do you push so hard?" she asked one cycle, finding him practicing forms alone after Vorla had dismissed him. "What drives you beyond mere survival?" Jace paused, wiping sweat from his brow with a forearm. "Survival isn't enough," he admitted, echoing her own words back at her. "I fight for the chance to choose my own fate, not to have it dictated by a chain or by your traditions." Kaelira considered his words, her head tilted. Choice, a rare luxury, even for a leader. There was a weariness in her voice he hadn't heard before. Every decision carries weight. Every choice has consequences. For the entire clan. They stood in silence for a moment, a fragile understanding passing between them, an acknowledgement of the pressures they both faced, albeit from vastly different positions. The air crackled with unspoken questions, with a connection forged not in shared culture, but in shared intensity. In mutual defiance against the roles fate seemed determined to cast them in. He was still her captive. She was still his captor. But the lines were blurring, complicated by respect grudgingly earned and a dangerous, growing curiosity about the person behind the rank, behind the alien facade. Jace's progress in training did not go unnoticed by the wider clan. Nor did Kaelira's unusual interest in the Terran captive. Whispers circulated through the stronghold. Glances grew sharper, tinged with suspicion and resentment. He was an outsider, an unknown quantity, and his presence, coupled with Kaelira's attention, clearly unsettled the established order. This simmering discontent crystallized around a specific figure, Borok, a massive, heavily scarred male warrior known for his brute strength and ambition. Borok led a rival faction within the clan, one that chafed under Kaelira's leadership, viewing her methods as sometimes too cautious, her reliance on strategy over pure aggression a sign of weakness. Borok saw Jace as a symbol of Kaelira's questionable judgment, a potential threat, and an opportunity to undermine her authority. The confrontation came, as most things did in this society, through violence. During a supposed training session, Borok publicly challenged Vorla's methods, sneering at the attention wasted on the Terran. "You coddle this off-worlder," Borok growled, his voice thick with contempt, gesturing towards Jace. He learns tricks, parlor games. He has no place among true warriors. He is weak. Kaelira allows this weakness to fester in our midst. Vorla bristled, her hand instinctively going to the hilt of her blade. The Terran learns discipline. He shows spirit. Kaelira tests him, as is her right, tests him. Borok scoffed, stepping forward, deliberately bumping Jace's shoulder, or keeps him as a pet. A strange, pale pet for her amusement. Jace stiffened, refusing to react, knowing Borok sought to provoke him. He bleeds like any other prey. Borok continued, leering at Jace. Perhaps a true test is needed. In the pit, let us see his spirit when faced with real death. Kaelira arrived then, drawn by the commotion, her presence silencing the murmurs that had started among the onlookers. She surveyed the scene, her gaze sharp, missing nothing. Borok, you question my command, she stated, her voice dangerously quiet. Borok met her gaze, refusing to back down. Though a flicker of unease crossed his face, I question the wisdom of indulging this thing. He disrupts the clan. He sows doubt. Prove his worth. Kaelira, or discard him. Let him face my champion in the pit. Then all will see his true nature. It was a direct challenge, not just to Jace, but to Kaelira's authority. Refusing would make her appear weak, protective of the outsider. Accepting meant potentially sending Jace, despite his training, to his death against one of Borok's seasoned pit fighters. The crowd watched, silent, waiting for her decision. Jace felt a cold knot form in his stomach. This was it, the proving ground Kaelira had spoken of. Kaelira looked from Borok's defiant sneer to Jace's carefully neutral expression. He saw the calculation in her eyes, the weighing of political necessity against, what? Her curiosity, her investment in his survival. The Terran is under my authority, she said finally, her voice ringing with command. His testing will be determined by me, not by your ambition. Borok. Borok's face hardened. Then you fear the outcome. You fear his weakness will shame you. Before Kaelira could respond, Jace stepped forward, his voice clear and steady, cutting through the tension. I accept the challenge. All eyes turned to him. Kaelira stared, surprised. Vorla looked alarmed. Borok grinned, a triumphant, predatory expression. You wish to face my champion? Kaelira asked Jace, her voice low, questioning. Yes, Jace replied, meeting her gaze. He couldn't stand by while his presence was used as a weapon against her. More than that, this was his chance. A chance to shatter the perception of him as a pet, as weak prey. A chance to earn respect. Not through Kaelira's protection, but through his own actions. Let me fight. Let me prove what I am. Kaelira studied him for a long moment, searching his face. Then, she nodded slowly. Very well, Borok. Your champion will face the Terran in the pit at the next cycle's peak light. Let the clan witness this test. She turned, her gaze lingering on Jace. Do not fail. Terran. Failure in the pit is final. The crowd dispersed, buzzing with anticipation. Borok shot Jace a look of smug certainty. Vorla approached Jace, her expression grim. This is madness. Terran, Borok's champion. Grok. He is a veteran of 50 pit fights. He kills for sport. I know, Jace said quietly, but I won't win by playing their game entirely. I have to use everything I've learned, everything I am. He spent the time before the fight honing his skills, meditating, focusing his mind. He wasn't Grok. He didn't have the raw power, the lifetime of brutal conditioning, but he had speed, agility, training Grok wouldn't anticipate, and a desperate will to survive, to prove himself. The day of the fight arrived, charged with an electric atmosphere. The pit was packed. The roar of the crowd even louder than before. Jace stood at one entrance, clad only in simple leather breeches, his Terran physique looking almost frail compared to the hulking forms around him. He gripped the serrated blade Vorla had given him, its weight familiar in his hand. Across the blood-stained sand, Grok waited. He was enormous, a mountain of muscle and matted fur. His face a mask of brutish scars. He carried a massive, crude axe that looked capable of splitting stone. He roared, slamming the axe against his chest, inciting the crowd to a frenzy. Jace took a deep breath, forcing calm, focusing on his strategy: speed, precision, endurance. Avoid the axe. Wear him down. The fight began. Grok charged, a bellowing avalanche of fury, swinging the axe in wide, devastating arcs. Jace moved, dodging, weaving, using the entire pit, forcing the larger warrior to constantly turn and pursue. The crowd jeered at his evasiveness, calling for blood. But Jace ignored them. He needed Grok to tire, to become frustrated. He risked quick, darting attacks, slashing at Grok's legs and arms with his blade, shallow cuts designed to bleed and distract rather than incapacitate. Grok roared in frustration, his swings becoming wilder, less controlled. He managed to land a glancing blow on Jace's side, sending him staggering, pain flaring through his ribs. The crowd screamed, sensing blood. Jace scrambled back, recovering quickly, his mind racing. He couldn't just evade. He needed to create an opening. He feinted left, then darted right as the axe swept past, and lunged forward, driving the point of his blade into the thick muscle of Grok's thigh. Grok howled in pain and rage, stumbling. He dropped the axe, grabbing Jace, lifting him effortlessly off the ground with one massive hand around his throat. Jace gagged, his vision blurring, the crowd's roar fading. He kicked, struggled, slashed futilely at the thick arm holding him. Grok squeezed, his knuckles white, just as consciousness began to slip away. Jace remembered a Terran move, a desperate counter. He drove both thumbs hard into the pressure points beneath Grok's jaw. The giant warrior grunted in shock and pain, his grip momentarily loosening. Jace twisted free, gasping for air, landing heavily on the sand. Grok, momentarily disoriented, reached for his axe. Jace saw his chance. He didn't try to match strength. He launched himself forward, low and fast, driving his shoulder into Grok's wounded thigh. The giant bellowed, his balance compromised, and crashed heavily onto his back. Before Grok could recover, Jace was on him, his blade pressed against the thick fur of Grok's throat. Silence fell over the pit. Even the roaring crowd was stunned into stillness. Grok lay pinned, breathing heavily, his eyes wide with disbelief and fear. Jace held the blade steady, his chest heaving, blood dripping from the cut on his side, mixing with the sand. He looked up, his gaze sweeping over the astonished faces in the stands, finally settling on Kaelira's high platform. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes burned with an intensity that seemed to sear him even from across the pit. Uruk stood beside her, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. Jace looked down at Grok. He could kill him, end it. It was the way of the pit. It was what the crowd expected. But he wasn't one of them. He pressed the blade slightly, drawing a bead of blood, ensuring the submission was absolute. Then, slowly, deliberately, he lowered the weapon. He rose, stepping back from the defeated champion. "The fight is over," Jace declared, his voice raw but carrying in the unnatural silence. "He is beaten." Grok scrambled away, clutching his wounded thigh, staring at Jace with newfound fear. Jace stood alone in the center of the pit, covered in blood and dust. breathing hard, but undeniably victorious. He hadn't just survived, he had won. On his own terms, a ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Confusion, respect, awe. He had defeated Borok's champion, a feared pit fighter, not through brute savagery, but through skill, tenacity, and an unexpected act of clemency. He had proven his fire. He looked back towards Kaelira. He had earned their fear, yes, but perhaps, just perhaps, he had also earned her respect. The silence held for another moment. Then Kaelira rose. She didn't speak, but she gave a single sharp nod. It was enough. The clan had witnessed his strength, and nothing would be the same again. Jace's victory in the pit resonated through the Brass Fang stronghold like a seismic shockwave. He was no longer just the Terran captive, the outsider pet. He was the warrior who had bested Grok, Borok's champion, through skill and an unnerving refusal to kill when victory was assured. Fear mingled with a grudging respect in the glances cast his way. Borok, humiliated and his influence diminished, retreated into sullen silence. Though Jace knew the rivalry was far from over, Vorla's training intensified, but the dynamic shifted. She treated him less like a raw recruit and more like a fellow warrior, albeit an unconventional one. Even the guards assigned to him, though still vigilant, showed a subtle deference. His chain remained, a constant reminder of his status, but the alcove began to feel less like a prison cell and more like earned territory. Kaelira sought him out soon after the fight. She found him tending to the gash on his side, applying a pungent herbal salve Vorla had provided. She dismissed his guards with a gesture and entered the alcove, her presence filling the small space. "You surprised them," she stated, her voice devoid of its usual amplified harshness. "You surprised me." Jace continued applying the salve, not looking up. "I did what I had to do. You could have killed him." Kaelira pressed. "It is the way of the pit. Mercy is weakness here, is it?" Jace countered, finally meeting her gaze. "Or is controlling the instinct to kill when it's unnecessary a different kind of strength? A strength your clan doesn't seem to recognize." Kaelira was silent for a long moment, studying him intently. "Borok is weakened. His faction is unsettled. You have given me leverage. That wasn't my intention," Jace said honestly. "My intention was to survive, and to prove I am not prey. You proved more than that, Terran." She stepped closer, her brass fur almost brushing his arm. "You showed them discipline, control, qualities rare even among my best warriors." She paused, her gaze searching his. "You earned their fear, and my respect." The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken implications. It was a significant concession from the proud leader of the Brass Fangs. "Respect doesn't unlock this chain," Jace observed wryly, gesturing towards his wrist. Kaelira's expression tightened slightly. "Freedom is not granted lightly. Respect is but the first step. Loyalty must be proven, deeply." She looked past him, towards the rough map of the surrounding territory carved into the alcove wall, a map Jace had been meticulously studying. "There are those who still see you as a threat, an anomaly. The elders, keepers of our oldest traditions, they are wary. Your victory impresses them, but it does not sway them entirely. They demand a greater test, a proof of allegiance that goes beyond the pit." Jace waited, sensing the weight of her words. "What do they demand?" "Proof of your commitment, not just to survival, but to the clan's future, our future." Kaelira turned back to him, her eyes locking onto his. "They demand you retrieve something of value, something lost, something that requires venturing into the cursed glacier." Jace felt a chill unrelated to the cavern's temperature. He knew the cursed glacier. He'd heard the whispers. seen the fear in the eyes of warriors who spoke its name. A vast, treacherous ice field to the north, notorious for its sudden storms, hidden crevasses, and worse, rumors of strange, mutated predators and unsettling phenomena. It was considered taboo territory, haunted ground from which few ever returned. "What do they want me to retrieve?" Jace asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Your ship, the Stardust Drifter," Kaelira replied. "Its core memory unit, the black box, as your kind calls it. It crashed near the glacier's edge after our encounter. The Elders believe it holds Terran secrets, knowledge that could be valuable or dangerous to the clan. They believe retrieving it, facing the glacier's perils, and bringing back this potential weapon or tool for the clan would be an undeniable act of loyalty. A sacrifice of your past allegiances." Jace processed this. Return to the site of his crew's death. Brave a place the beast women themselves feared. Retrieve the flight recorder, essentially handing over Terran operational data, ship capabilities, perhaps even star charts, to Kaelira's clan. It was a test designed to sever his ties to the Confederacy, to prove his willingness to put the brass fangs first. It was also incredibly dangerous, bordering on suicidal. No beast woman has entered the cursed glacier and returned alive in generations, Jace stated quietly. "The Elders know this. They're sending me to die. They are testing your limits," Kaelira corrected, though her voice lacked conviction. "They test your resolve, your willingness to risk everything. And what do you think?" "Kaelira," Jace challenged, "do you think this is a fair test? Or a convenient way to dispose of the troublesome Terran?" Kaelira looked away, pacing the small confines of the alcove. "The Elders hold significant power. Their traditions bind us. Defying them directly risks fracturing the clan, something Borok would eagerly exploit." She stopped, facing him again. "Their demand is harsh, perhaps insurmountable. But if you were to succeed, if I succeed," Jace finished, "I prove my loyalty in a way no one can deny. I gain a standing beyond that of a captive." "Yes," Kaelira affirmed. "You would earn a place, not as property, perhaps even as an ally." An ally. The word resonated with possibilities, with a future he hadn't dared to imagine. But the price was steep. The cursed glacier. He thought of his crew, of the violence that had brought him here. Retrieving the black box felt like a betrayal of their memory. Yet, staying chained in this cave was a slow death of the spirit. If he wanted freedom, if he wanted to stand on his own terms, maybe this was the only way. "The Elders expect me to go alone, I assume," Jace said, "to fail and perish in the ice." "That is their expectation," Kaelira confirmed. "A trial by ordeal, alone against the impossible." Jace looked at her, at the powerful leader who seemed both intrigued and perhaps burdened by his presence. An idea sparked. Audacious, dangerous. "I won't go alone." Kaelira raised a brow. "Vorla would not be permitted." "Not Vorla," Jace interrupted. "You." Silence descended again, thick and heavy. Kaelira stared at him, her expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. "You demand that I accompany you into the cursed glacier." "You said value is earned," Jace reminded her. "You said loyalty must be proven." "My loyalty, yes. But what of yours? You respect my strength. You say, you see potential. If you truly believe I might be an ally, not just a captive, then prove it. Share the risk. Face the glacier with me. Show the Elders. Show the clan. Show me that your interest is genuine, that you are willing to invest in this possibility. Not just observe it from the safety of your throne. It was an enormous gamble, asking the leader of the clan to undertake such a perilous, taboo journey for the sake of a captive outsider. He expected refusal, anger, perhaps even punishment for his audacity. Kaelira remained silent for a long time, her burning eyes fixed on his, searching, weighing. The political risks were immense, the physical dangers undeniable. Yet, he saw something else flicker in her gaze, the same fire she had recognized in him, a spark of challenge, a hint of recklessness, perhaps even a desire to break free, just for a moment, from the rigid constraints of her leadership. "You ask much, Terran," she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. "You risk much by asking." Jace held her gaze, unblinking. "Isn't that what your clan values? Risk, strength, proving oneself." A slow smile, sharp and dangerous, spread across Kaelira's face. "Very well. Jace Thorn, your audacity is compelling. I will go with you. We will face the cursed glacier together. We will retrieve your black box, and together, we will show the elders the true meaning of commitment." She stepped back, her authority settling back around her like a cloak. "Prepare yourself. We leave when the twin moons are dark." Her decision sent a tremor through Jace, a mixture of apprehension and exhilaration. He had pushed, and she had met his challenge. They were going into the heart of the forbidden, together. Whatever happened on the ice, their fates were now irrevocably intertwined. The preparation for the journey into the cursed glacier was conducted with a tense secrecy. Kaelira announced only that she was undertaking a vital reconnaissance mission to the Northern Territories, accompanied by a single, unnamed scout. Only Vorla and a few of Kaelira's most trusted inner circle knew the truth, their grim expressions betraying the gravity of the undertaking. Borak and his faction watched with suspicion, sensing something unusual but unable to pinpoint the cause. Jace was provided with gear suitable for the extreme conditions. Thick, insulated furs layered over thermal undergarments, heavy boots with retractable crampons, goggles to protect against ice glare, and rations of dense, high-energy food bars. He was also given back his sidearm, a standard Terran pulse pistol, checked and fully charged. It felt strange, alien, yet reassuringly familiar in his hand after so long. Kaelira, shedding her ornate command regalia for practical, dark furs that blended with the rock and ice, looked even more formidable, a predator in her natural element. She carried her own energy rifle and a wickedly curved blade strapped to her back. They left the stronghold under the cover of the pre-dawn darkness, slipping out through a little-used tunnel that bypassed the main gates. The air outside was razor-sharp, the twin moons casting long, eerie shadows across the snow-covered landscape. They moved quickly and silently, Kaelira leading the way with an unerring sense of direction. Jace following closely, his senses on high alert. The first part of the journey led them across windswept plains and through jagged foothills, the silence broken only by the crunch of their boots on the crusty snow and the mournful howl of the wind. They spoke little, conserving energy, focusing on maintaining a steady pace. Jace found himself acutely aware of Kaelira's presence beside him, the quiet confidence in her movements, the way she scanned the horizon, her senses seemingly attuned to every nuance of the environment. A fragile truce existed between them, born of shared purpose and shared danger. As they climbed higher, the terrain became more treacherous. Snow deepened, concealing hidden crevasses. The wind intensified, driving stinging ice particles against their faces. They roped themselves together for safety when crossing particularly unstable slopes, moving with careful coordination. Jace, despite his Terran physiology, found his endurance tested by the relentless cold and thin air. But Kaelira seemed tireless, her powerful frame moving with an economy of effort born of a lifetime in this environment. During brief rests, huddled behind rock formations for shelter, they shared rations and melted snow for water using a small thermal unit Kaelira carried. In these moments, the silence sometimes gave way to terse conversation. "Your world?" Kaelira asked once, her voice muffled by her fur hood. "Is it like this? Cold? Harsh?" Jace shook his head, picturing Earth's green continents, its warm oceans. "No, it's different. Green dot blue dot warm in many places. Full of life. Noise." He hesitated. "Full of people." Kaelira considered this. "Soft places breed soft beings." "Not always," Jace countered. "Hardship takes many forms. We face different challenges: political strife, resource scarcity, ourselves." Kaelira looked at him, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "Conflict is universal, it seems." The boundary of the cursed glacier was unmistakable. The land changed abruptly, the relatively stable ice giving way to a chaotic jumble of fractured blue ice towers, deep, shadowed fissures, and unnatural silence. The wind seemed to die, replaced by a heavy, oppressive stillness that felt profoundly wrong. A faint, greenish luminescence pulsed deep within the ice, casting eerie shadows. Even Kaelira paused, her hand resting on her weapon, scanning the unnatural landscape with wary eyes. "The air feels wrong," she murmured. "Tainted." Reports mentioned strange energy readings. Jace recalled from his mission briefing. Ages ago, it seemed. Possible radiation. Or something else. They proceeded with extreme caution. Kaelira testing the ice ahead with a long pole. Jace watching their backs, pistol drawn. The silence pressed in, broken only by the crunch of their boots and the occasional groan of shifting ice deep below. Visibility decreased as a strange, phosphorescent mist began to rise from the crevasses, swirling around them, limiting sight to mere meters. Strange shapes seemed to coalesce and dissolve within the mist, playing tricks on the eyes. Jace felt a prickle of unease crawl up his spine, the instinctual fear of the unknown. They found the wreckage of the Stardust Drifter partially embedded in the ice wall of a large crevasse, tilted at a dangerous angle. It was a mangled ruin, scarred by energy weapon fire, twisted by the impact. Seeing it again, the tomb of his crew, sent a pang of grief and guilt through Jace. He forced the emotion down. They had a task to do. Getting down to the wreck was perilous, requiring careful use of ropes and ice axes on the sheer, slick surface. Inside, the ship was a scene of devastation. Emergency lights flickered sporadically, casting distorted shadows. Frost coated every surface. The bodies of his crew were mercifully encased in ice, preserved in their final moments. Jace averted his gaze, focusing on reaching the cockpit. The flight recorder, the black box, was located beneath the main console. It took their combined strength to pry open the damaged access panel, the metal groaning in protest. Jace carefully disconnected the heavily armored orange box, its surface cold to the touch. It felt heavy in his hands, heavy with the data it contained, heavy with the potential consequences of bringing it back. As Jace secured the black box in his pack, a low growl echoed from deeper within the wreckage. Kaelira spun, rifle raised, peering into the darkness. "Something is here," she whispered. From the shadows of the cargo hold, multiple pairs of eyes gleamed with feral, unnatural light. Shapes detached themselves from the darkness, creatures unlike anything Jace had ever seen. They vaguely resembled the native Krell beasts he'd glimpsed near the stronghold, but these were horribly mutated, their fur patchy, their limbs twisted at odd angles, claws elongated, teeth bared in a rictus grin. Their eyes burned with a sickly green luminescence, the same strange light that pulsed from the glacier itself. Radiation mutants, or worse. They stalked forward, moving with a jerky, unnatural gait drawn by the intruders. Glacier ghouls, Kaelira breathed, her voice tight. Legends speak of them, creatures twisted by the ice's curse. There were at least 6 of them, converging on their position. Back to the ropes, Jace yelled, firing his pulse pistol. The energy bolt struck one of the ghouls, searing its flesh, but it barely slowed, screeching hideously. Kaelira opened fire with her rifle, the powerful blasts tearing chunks from the creatures. But they kept coming, driven by mindless hunger or territorial imperative. They scrambled back towards the opening, firing as they retreated. One ghoul lunged, its claws tearing at Jace's leg. He cried out, kicking it away. Stumbling, Kaelira grabbed him, hauling him upright, covering their retreat with disciplined bursts of fire. They reached the ropes, Jace's leg throbbing. Go, Kaelira ordered, shoving him towards the ascent line. I'll hold them. No, Jace shouted back, firing his pistol at a ghoul scrabbling up the ice wall. Together, he started climbing, ignoring the pain, while Kaelira laid down suppressing fire below. The ghouls, surprisingly agile despite their deformities, began to climb the ice wall after them. Jace reached the lip of the crevasse, turning to help Kaelira. She scrambled up just as the first ghoul reached the top, its claws swiping at her legs. Jace blasted it point blank, sending it tumbling back into the depths. Another appeared. Kaelira spun, her curved blade flashing, decapitating the creature with a single powerful blow. They didn't stop. Scrambling away from the crevasse edge, back into the swirling, phosphorescent mist, the screeches of the remaining ghouls echoing from below. They ran, pushing through the disorienting fog, Jace leaning heavily on Kaelira as his injured leg protested. The green mist seemed to thicken, the shapes within it becoming more defined. Whispering voices seeming to echo just at the edge of hearing, voices of his dead crew, accusing. Mourning, Jace shook his head, trying to clear it. Hallucinations. The glacier wasn't just physically dangerous, it attacked the mind. Kaelira seemed affected too, her head snapping around, her eyes narrowed, occasionally murmuring names Jace didn't recognize, lost warriors, perhaps. She gripped his arm tighter, her strength a grounding presence. Focus, Terran, she gritted out. The ice plays tricks. Trust only what you feel, what you see clearly. They pushed onward, relying on Kaelira's instinct and the crude compass Jace carried, navigating by feel as much as sight. The mist thinned gradually as they moved away from the wreckage site, the oppressive silence returning. They finally broke free from the cursed glacier's immediate influence as the twin moons began to paint the eastern sky with the first hints of dawn. They collapsed behind a ridge, exhausted, battered, but alive. Jace's leg was bleeding freely. Kaelira had several deep scratches on her arms, and both were covered in grime and frost. Kaelira produced a med kit, efficiently cleaning and binding Jace's wound with practiced hands. Her touch was surprisingly gentle, focused. We did it, Jace breathed, leaning back against the cold rock, clutching the pack containing the black box. We faced it, together. Kaelira finished tending his leg, then looked at him, her usual stern expression softened by fatigue and relief. Yes, together, in the shared ordeal, facing the horrors of the glacier, the mutated creatures, the psychological assaults, a profound shift had occurred. They had relied on each other, saved each other, bled together. The roles of captor and captive seemed utterly irrelevant now. They were survivors, allies. As they rested, waiting for full light before starting the arduous journey back, Jace met Kaelira's gaze across the small space. Acknowledgement passed between them, unspoken but deeply felt. They had gone into the cursed place, defied tradition and death, and emerged, changed. Now came the next challenge, returning to the clan and facing the consequences of their success. The journey back to the Brass Fang stronghold was arduous, slowed by Jace's injury and their shared exhaustion. Yet, there was a new dynamic between them. The silence was less tense, more companionable. They worked together seamlessly, anticipating each other's needs. Kaelira supporting Jace when his leg faltered, Jace taking point when his sharper Terran eyesight could pick out hazards Kaelira might miss in the changing light. They spoke more freely, sharing stories of past campaigns. Kaelira describing clan rivalries and territorial disputes, Jace recounting tales of interstellar diplomacy and exploration, careful to avoid sensitive Confederacy details. They were learning about each other, not as leader and captive, but as individuals who had faced death side by side. When they finally reached the familiar territory surrounding the stronghold, Kaelira signaled their approach. Warriors emerged cautiously, their initial suspicion turning to shock as they recognized their leader, battered but alive, accompanied by the Terran, who carried a heavy pack and leaned on Kaelira for support. Vorla rushed forward, her usual stoicism cracking with relief as she saw Kaelira safe. Whispers turned to shouts as the news spread like wildfire. Kaelira had returned, not from a simple reconnaissance, but from the cursed glacier, and the Terran was with her. They had done the impossible. They entered the main cavern to a stunned silence. Every eye was on them, on Kaelira's disheveled state, on Jace's injury, on the undeniable fact that they had returned together from the Forbidden Zone. Vorak stood near the central fire pit, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. The elders, alerted to their arrival, assembled on their traditional high platform, their ancient faces grim and unreadable. Kaelira didn't pause, ignoring her own fatigue and injuries. She led Jace directly towards the elders' platform, her stride regaining its customary authority. She stopped at the base, Jace standing steadfastly beside her, meeting the elders' stern gazes without flinching. "Elders," Kaelira announced, her voice ringing through the cavern. "We have returned." One of the oldest, a female named Zathra, whose fur was streaked with gray, leaned forward. "You undertook a perilous journey, Kaelira, one forbidden by tradition, and you took the outsider with you. We undertook the trial you demanded of the Terran," Kaelira corrected, her voice firm. "You wished for proof of loyalty. You wished for the retrieval of the Terran vessel's memory core from the cursed glacier, a task deemed impossible, a task designed to end his life." She gestured to Jace. Jace Thorn faced the glacier's horrors. He faced the corrupted beasts that dwell there. He risked his life not for his former masters, but to fulfill the demands of this clan. Jace stepped forward then, unshouldering his pack. He opened it and carefully lifted out the orange, frost-covered black box. He held it up for all to see. "I have returned with the prize you sought," Jace declared, his voice carrying surprising strength. "The knowledge within this device, potentially valuable to the Brass Fangs, is yours. I faced the place you fear most to retrieve it." He placed the black box on the stone floor before the elders' platform. "I have met your challenge. I have proven my commitment through action, not words." A wave of murmurs swept through the assembled clan. Borak looked apoplectic, unable to comprehend this outcome. The elders exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from sternness to grudging acknowledgement. Zathra looked down at the black box, then at Jace, then at Kaelira, who stood unwavering beside him. "You have done what was asked," Zathra conceded slowly. "You retrieved the artifact. You survived the glacier. This is noted." Jace straightened, meeting her gaze directly. "Noted," he repeated, his voice hardening. "I did not risk my life, nor did Kaelira risk hers, accompanying me, simply to be noted. I fulfilled your impossible demand. I brought back something you desired, facing dangers your own warriors shun. I am not Terran prey. I am not Kaelira's pet. I have earned my place through trial and sacrifice. I demand recognition, not as a captive, not as a tolerated outsider, as an equal, an ally." Another wave of shocked silence hit the cavern. A Terran, a former captive, demanding equality within the clan. It was unheard of. Outrageous. Borak started forward, roaring in protest. "He dares." Kaelira silenced him with a single, imperious glare. She stepped level with Jace, facing the elders together. "He speaks the truth," Kaelira stated, her voice resonating with power. "Jace Thorn has proven his strength, his courage, and his loyalty beyond any doubt. He bled for this clan on the glacier. He offers his skills, his knowledge, not as a servant, but as a partner." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the elders, then the entire clan. "The old ways dictate that only those born of the clan, proven through generations, can stand as equals. Tradition demands subservience from outsiders. If they are permitted to live at all." Her eyes found Jace's, a fierce light burning within them. "But Jace Thorn is not merely an outsider. He is a warrior who matches my own spirit. He challenges me, he strengthens me, and he has earned my respect, my trust, and my allegiance." She turned fully to the elders, her voice ringing with defiance. "General of the Brass Fangs." She took a deep breath, the entire cavern holding theirs. "Will renounce my command. I will leave this throne, this stronghold, and I will walk away with him. I choose him, his strength, his spirit, over stagnant tradition." Gasps echoed through the hall. Vorla looked stunned. Borak's jaw dropped. Even the elders seemed taken aback by the sheer force of Kaelira's declaration. Renounce her command. For a Terran, it was unthinkable. Zathra leaned forward, her ancient eyes narrowed. "You would abandon your people, your birthright, for him. I would forge a new path," Kaelira countered fiercely. "One built on earned respect and mutual strength, not blind adherence to laws that would discard such a proven warrior. He is my match. I claim him as such. If the clan refuses, then the clan loses us both." The elders conferred in urgent, hushed tones, their faces etched with conflict. The clan waited, the tension palpable. Finally, Zathra raised a hand for silence. "Your words shake the very foundations of our ways. Kaelira, your choice is radical. The bond you claim, forged outside the clan, outside our sacred rites." She paused, her gaze heavy. "Such a bond, if it is to be recognized, cannot be merely declared. It must be consecrated, proven not just by surviving the glacier, but by surviving the ultimate test, the trial of bone and fire." A collective intake of breath swept the cavern. The trial of bone and fire was the most ancient, most sacred, and most dangerous rite of the Beast Women clans, reserved for moments of profound crisis or the forging of unbreakable bonds between leaders. It tested endurance, spirit, and the very soul, burning away all impurities, leaving only truth. Few undertook it, fewer still survived. "If you both face the trial," Zathra continued, her voice solemn, "if you both endure its crucible and emerge bound by its sacred flame, then, and only then, will the clan recognize your bond. Then, Jace Thorn, You will have your place, not as captive, not as outsider, but as Kaelira's chosen equal. But if you fail, if either of you fails, the fire will consume you both, and your claim will turn to ash. Kaelira looked at Jace, her eyes searching his. She had defied tradition for him, risked everything. Now, the final price was laid bare, the trial of bone and fire. Together, Jace met her gaze, seeing the fire, the challenge, the trust. He thought of the chain, the pit, the glacier. He thought of the future Kaelira offered, a future earned, not given. He nodded slowly, decisively. We accept the trial, Jace said, his voice firm, echoing Kaelira's earlier defiance. Kaelira turned back to the elders, her hand finding Jace's, their fingers lacing together. A public declaration stronger than any words. Let it be prepared, Kaelira commanded. We will face the fire together. The air in the chamber of trials was thick with incense and anticipation, carved deep beneath the stronghold. The circular chamber was ancient, the stone walls covered in faded pictograms depicting generations of trials, sacrifices, and unions. In the center, a wide, shallow basin smoldered with coals that glowed with an intense, unnatural heat, radiating waves of energy that prickled the skin. The elders stood arrayed on one side, their faces solemn masks. The rest of the clan packed the observation galleries above, silent, watchful. Kaelira and Jace stood before the basin, stripped to simple loincloths, their bodies marked with ritualistic white paint by Vorla, who now stood near the elders, her expression unreadable. They had spent the intervening cycle meditating, fasting, preparing their minds and bodies for the ordeal ahead. Zathra stepped forward, holding a ceremonial obsidian dagger. The trial of bone and fire tests the body, the spirit, and the bond. She intoned, her voice echoing in the chamber. Pain reveals truth. Fire burns away deception. Only that which is pure, strong, and truly united can endure. She gestured towards the smoldering basin. You will enter the crucible. You will endure the heat, the pain, the visions the sacred flame reveals. You must remain connected, supporting each other, drawing strength from your claimed bond. If the bond is false, the fire will sever it and consume you. If it is true, the fire will temper it, forge it into something unbreakable. The trial ends only when the last coal fades, or when one of you yields or perishes. Kaelira looked at Jace, her eyes searching his one last time. He saw no fear, only fierce determination and a trust that humbled him. He nodded, gripping her hand tighter. Together, they stepped forward, towards the basin. Zathra raised the obsidian dagger. First, the test of bone. She made 2 swift, deep cuts on Kaelira's outstretched forearm, the dark blood welling instantly. Then, she turned to Jace, making identical cuts on his arm, ignoring the sharp sting. Taking a deep breath, Kaelira led the way, stepping onto the searingly hot coals. Jace followed without hesitation, hissing as the intense heat scorched the soles of his feet, searing pain shooting up his legs. The air shimmered around them, thick and suffocating. They stood side by side in the center of the basin, hands clasped tightly. The heat an almost unbearable pressure. Sweat poured down their bodies, mingling with the ritual paint and blood. The pain was immense, demanding every ounce of willpower to endure, to not cry out, to not pull away. Jace focused on Kaelira's hand in his, her grip unbelievably strong, grounding him. He met her eyes through the shimmering heat haze, seeing his own pain reflected there, but also her indomitable spirit. The fire wasn't just physical. As the heat intensified, Visions began to swim before Jace's eyes, born of the fumes, the pain, the chamber's strange energy. He saw the ambush again, the faces of his dying crew. He saw his life back with the Confederacy, the sterile corridors of starships, the empty protocols of diplomacy. He saw his fear in the pit, his desperation on the glacier. Doubts gnawed at him. Was this real? Was Kaelira just using him? Was he betraying everything he once stood for? He felt his resolve waver, the pain threatening to overwhelm him. Then, he felt Kaelira squeeze his hand, hard. He looked at her. Her face was tight with agony, but her eyes burned with fierce clarity. She was seeing things too. He knew, facing her own demons, the pressures of leadership, the ghosts of fallen warriors, the weight of tradition she was defying. Yet, she stood firm, drawing strength from him, even as she offered it. He focused on that connection, on the reality of her presence, her sacrifice, her choice. He pushed back against the phantoms, against the pain. He wasn't just enduring for himself, he was enduring for her, for the bond they claimed. They stood in the crucible for what felt like an eternity, locked in a silent battle against pain and illusion, drawing strength solely from each other's presence, their clasped hands a lifeline in the inferno. The coals slowly began to fade, the intense heat lessening, though the agony in their burned feet remained. The visions receded, leaving behind only exhaustion and the raw truth of their shared ordeal. They had faced the fire, within and without, and they had not broken. They had not let go. As the last coal flickered and died, leaving only smoking ash, Zathra stepped forward again. Kaelira and Jace swayed, leaning on each other, utterly spent but upright. Zathra examined their clasped hands, their bleeding arms pressed together, their burned feet. She looked into their eyes, searching for any sign of falsehood, any lingering doubt. She found none, only exhaustion, pain, and an unshakable connection. Slowly, solemnly, Zathra nodded. "The trial is complete," she announced. Her voice filled with a resonance that acknowledged the profound shift that had occurred. The fire has tested them. The bone has bound them. Their bond is forged. Their claim is true. She turned to the clan watching from the galleries. Behold, Kaelira, general of the Brass Fangs, and Jace Thorn, her chosen equal, bound by blood and fire. Let their union be recognized. A collective sigh seemed to pass through the chamber, followed by a rising murmur of acceptance, of awe. Vorla stepped forward, offering Kaelira and Jace supporting arms, helping them step carefully out of the basin of ashes. The pain was excruciating, but it was overshadowed by a profound sense of relief, of triumph. They had done it. They had faced the ultimate trial and survived. Together, their bond was no longer just a claim. It was a consecrated reality, witnessed and accepted by the clan. As Vorla led them away to tend to their burns, Jace caught Kaelira's eye. A faint smile touched her lips, mirrored by his own. They were burned, bloodied, exhausted, but they were united, equals, finally and irrevocably. In the cycles that followed their trial by fire, a tangible shift occurred within the Brass Fang clan. The whispers of doubt and suspicion faded, replaced by a grudging, then growing, respect for Jace Thorn. He was no longer the outsider, the Terran captive. He was Jace Thorn, Kaelira's bonded equal, the one who had survived the pit, conquered the cursed glacier, and endured the sacred fire. He moved freely within the stronghold, his chain long since removed. He sat beside Kaelira in council meetings, his insights into strategy, technology, and diplomacy offering a new perspective that often complemented Kaelira's fierce pragmatism. He continued to train with Vorla and the other warriors, not as a student, but as a comrade. His Terran techniques and quick thinking earning him a place among their elite fighters. Vorok remained a potential rival, but his influence was significantly curtailed. Challenging Kaelira now meant challenging Jace as well, a prospect few were willing to entertain after his displays of prowess and endurance. The bond between Jace and Kaelira deepened, evolving beyond the crucible of shared danger into a true partnership. They learned each other's rhythms, strengths, and vulnerabilities. Jace saw the immense burden Kaelira carried, the constant pressure to maintain strength and protect her people in a harsh world. Kaelira saw Jace's sharp intellect, his unwavering loyalty once given, and the core of integrity that guided him. Their relationship wasn't one of submission, as Kaelira had initially perhaps expected from any male consort. Nor was it the fiery clash of their early encounters. It was built on mutual respect, trust earned through extreme adversity, and a shared vision for a stronger, more secure future for the clan. A future that valued both the fierce traditions of the Beast Women and the potential offered by new ideas and alliances. They were different species, different cultures, forged in different worlds, yet bound by something stronger than fire, a connection of spirit, a meeting of equals. It was during a strategy council, discussing potential trade routes for the valuable crystals, now that Kaelira felt more secure in her leadership, that Vorla entered with urgent news. General, Commander Thorn. She addressed them both. The dual title, now standard practice. Sensors have detected an approaching vessel, Terran Confederacy signature, heavy cruiser class. They are requesting permission to land. They say they are here to investigate the disappearance of the Stardust Drifter and Captain Jace Thorn. A hush fell over the council. All eyes turned to Jace. His past had arrived. He felt a complex mix of emotions, a pang of connection to his former life, apprehension about the Confederacy's intentions, and a fierce protectiveness towards his new life, his new people. Kaelira. Kaelira watched him, her expression calm but alert. Your people, she stated quietly. What are your orders? Commander Thorn. It was a subtle test, a confirmation of where his loyalties now lay. Jace met her gaze, his resolve clear. Grant them permission to land at the original coordinates, outside the valley. Single shuttle only. Diplomatic envoy. Minimal guards. We will meet them there. Together. Kaelira nodded, relaying the orders. The meeting on the ice plain felt strangely familiar, yet entirely different. A sleek Terran shuttle rested where the Stardust Drifter had once stood. A delegation of 3 emerged, 2 stern-faced security personnel and a high-ranking diplomat, Ambassador Corvin, a man Jace recognized from previous postings. Corvin's eyes widened in shock as he saw Jace standing not as a rescued captive, but side by side with the imposing, brass-furred leader of the Beast Women clan, both flanked by formidable-looking warriors, including Vorla. Jace wore attire that blended Terran functionality with brass fang elements, practical trousers and boots, but with a heavy, dark pelt cloak clasped with polished bone. His pulse pistol holstered visibly at his side. Kaelira stood tall and proud, radiating authority. Captain Thorn, Corvin stammered, recovering quickly. By the stars, you're alive. We feared the worst. These natives. They reported your ship destroyed. Ambassador Corvin, Jace replied, his voice calm and measured. My former ship was destroyed. My crew was lost in an unfortunate conflict arising from a misunderstanding during initial contact. He gestured towards Kaelira. Allow me to introduce General Kaelira, leader of the Brass Fang clan. And I am no longer Captain Thorn of the Diplomatic Corps. I am Jace Thorn, commander and bonded consort to the general. Corvin stared, aghast. Consort, bonded, captain. What madness is this? Have they drugged you? Brainwashed you? Jace held up a hand. Ambassador, I assure you, I am of sound mind. My circumstances have changed. My allegiances have shifted. I have found a place here, among the brass fangs, earned through trial and mutual respect. Kaelira stepped forward slightly, her burning eyes fixing on the Terran diplomat. Jace Thorn is bound to me, and to this clan, by choice and by sacred right. He is not your captive to be rescued, nor your officer to be reclaimed. He is our ally, our commander. Corvin looked from Jace's resolute face to Kaelira's fierce two-yen bow. He seemed to struggle for words. But the crystals, the mission, the Confederacy needs those resources. Negotiations regarding the crystal deposits can occur, Jace said smoothly, stepping into the role of diplomat once more, but from a different side of the table. But they will occur between equals, between the Terran Confederacy and the sovereign Brass Fang clan, represented by General Kaelira and myself. We are open to discussion, Ambassador. But understand this, Veraxis Prime is not territory to be claimed or exploited. It is a world to be respected, and its people dealt with honorably. Corvin looked flustered, unprepared for this radical shift in the situation. He clearly expected to retrieve a traumatized survivor, perhaps make demands of primitive savages. Instead, he faced a united front, a former Terran officer standing as an equal beside a powerful alien leader. This is highly irregular, Corvin managed. The Confederacy will need time to process this development. Take all the time you need, Kaelira said, her voice leaving no room for argument. But know that any future dealings will be on our terms, based on respect, not assumption, not condescension. The Terran delegation departed soon after, clearly stunned and uncertain. Jace watched their shuttle lift off, disappearing into the purple sky. He turned to Kaelira, who was watching him with a knowing look in her eyes. Your past, she murmured. Does it call to you? Jace looked around at the vast, icy landscape, at the black peaks rising against the sky, at Vorla and the other warriors standing nearby, their loyalty now encompassing him as well. He looked at Kaelira, at the fierce, intelligent leader who had captured him, challenged him, respected him, and ultimately bound herself to him. He no longer felt like a captive, or even just a survivor. He felt like he belonged. My past is a memory, Kaelira, he said, taking her hand, feeling the familiar strength in her grip. My present and my future are here, with you, with the clan. Kaelira's sharp features softened into a rare, genuine smile. Good. We have much work to do, my commander. A new era begins for the Brass Fangs, one built not on conquest alone, but on trust, unity, and strength forged in fire. They turned and walked back towards the stronghold, side by side, equals. Partners, ready to face whatever challenges this harsh world, or the galaxy beyond, might throw at them. The icy wind whipped around them, but Jace no longer felt its bite. He felt only the warmth of Kaelira's hand, the strength of their bond, and the promise of a future he had never imagined, a future he had fought for and won, here on the savage, beautiful peaks of Veraxis Prime.